Join Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio, the host of Only the Best for You. Be a change maker and unlock the secret to your best life. Hello, this is Denise Joy Thompson, and I am here with Carol Davies today. And I am so excited to be talking with Carol and talking about her journey, talking about her life, talking about her experiences. And I'm very excited that Carol has said yes to be a host with Global Voice Radio. And this is just adding to what Carol has already accomplished in her life, and especially the fact that she's one of our Canadian hosts and really making Global Voice Radio, having a global and international impact from our hosts being from around the world. So Carol, hello to you and welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, and a big welcome to you too, here to snowy Canada. Right now, we've got about a foot of snow and it's pretty wet, cold and icy out there, but it's great talking to you because I think you're having a lot warmer weather down there. Anyways, I just wanted to say how excited I am to be joining this project because I have had a little experience over the past year or so doing some broadcasting through radio, and it just was such a delight when I heard that you were doing this and you were interested, because it's wonderful through the internet and video, being able to just share what we know and make things better for people.
Well, one of the things that I believe we as business owners, we as coaches, sharing our message is so important. And there are different platforms to do that, but I also know a supportive program, a very synergistic program, working with like-minded people to share their message around the world, and that creates an impact. And I know that you in your own life have had a huge impact because of what you have done. And we're going to talk about your career and what you have done around the world. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about you, introducing you to our Global Voice Radio audience and sharing who you are with your listeners and basically with the world. So this is your introduction to the world in regards to who you are and the message that you're going to share in Global Voice Radio.
Well, thank you. Well, I guess I'll start with just letting you know a little bit about my background. I've lived in Canada, and I was born in London, Ontario, a few years back. I'll always be 39, as they say. And I've traveled quite a bit too, but I was very fortunate to be born into a very loving, stable family. My mother came from a family of 10, and I had 39 first cousins, all within probably an hour's drive or visit. So I grew up in a very big family like that. I have one sister. So my mother did not follow in her mother's footsteps, although one of my aunts had 11 children, which was something. And interestingly enough, my mother got instant family because I am an identical twin. So this is something a lot of people find quite fascinating, because it's like you've got two people who have appeared in the world at the same time, and you'd think we're very much alike, but there are differences. But I have one advantage, because I always had my very best friend with me growing up, and we're still together this day. And I'm so blessed and fortunate in that. Now, that isn't to say that we didn't have our little differences and this and that, but I grew up as part of two people in a unit. And I found for myself that as I got older, it was sort of a quest of mine to establish a separate identity of me. Because as I was growing up, I was always used to being referred to as the twins. So that's like one. And for me, it's always been a lot about expressing myself, finding my own path. And not to say that being part of a unit isn't great, but that had a real impact on me and how I was treated. And I'm not saying, in a bad way, but just, how people react to you. So I very much learned how to, I'm a little bit of the quieter one. So I've always been able to sit back and listen a little bit more, taking my time and then making, up my mind where to go. But I've always known really what I want to do. And I always loved reading and traveling because as a young family, our parents did take us traveling quite a bit, on the summer vacations. And we went down into the United States quite a bit, especially along the Jersey Shore and around Wildwood, which has beautiful beaches. So that started my love of travel. And my father also worked on the railway up here, and he got free passes. So we traveled a lot by train, and I just love trains. So when I've traveled, I usually my first choice now is trains, not flying so much. But I guess I've got a really exploring, interested spirit that wants to see everything. Because when I was younger, I grew up in a small town and it was nice. But as I got older, I saw that there's that whole world out there. And I used to find it through books because I had a few health problems when I was a bit younger. And as I got, into adulthood, that vanished. But that love of reading and exploring is part of who I am. And I love communicating with people too, to express if I found out something new or what I think they can, learn from. And just being, in a large, loving, supportive family, we were able to help each other out. And my parents set a strong role as volunteers. So I've done a lot of volunteer work in my life, especially once I got into my, adult years. I lived in the States for quite a long time, so I did literacy volunteer tutoring and training, and I just loved that. And now I'm still continuing doing volunteer work, but, reaching out, helping others has just been part of who I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that you mentioned that can be so important to us is having that extended family. And you definitely had a huge extended family with all of your first cousins. And so you had, in, like you said, a very short distance around you, a support system, which is very important to us growing up. And, you mentioned a few other things that is important to us as a person and to us as business owners, entrepreneurs, is reading. Because it helps us with our personal development. It helps us with understanding the world, understanding different cultures. So talk a little bit about what are some of the books that had significant impact on you?
Well, when I was very young, I read the book called Heidi, and that was set in Switzerland. And I fell in love with that book. And I said to myself, when I must have been maybe 8 or 9 years old, I want to live in Switzerland. And years later, I did live and work in Switzerland. So that one was about a young girl who went to, help another one. And it was just something about, oh my goodness, isn't that exciting? And then other books that I like to read as I got older are those sort of things that you can learn from, things to apply in my own life. Like if I'm having questions or maybe some problems, I'll try to find, some good books to read, like not philosophy specifically, but one of the ones I found very, very meaningful a few years back is called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it has four very simple things that you sort of center your life around. And a lot of it has to do with, truth, integrity, valuing yourself. And those are some really central values that I see in myself that I try to honor. And then I love reading also, self-development books. I probably over the years have had the biggest self-help book library going. But I used to, as I say, lived for quite a while in Switzerland. So I was sort of on my own and I didn't have a big support system. So reading and books became, a thing that made me feel connected and safe in a way. Not that, because you can travel in your mind, but if you don't have, the immediate support system, there are things that you can do and, connecting out through the internet, things like that. And other types of books that I like too, surprisingly enough, I adore what they call the romance novels. So that's my idea of a lovely, indulgent day, getting a little bit of light reading, falling in love with the hero, following their journey, and it ends happily ever after.
Right. Well, one of the things about books is it can feed our mind in so many ways. It can, like you said, it can be self-development. It can be used for relaxation, for some downtime. And, you've mentioned several very important things. And one of the things that came to mind when you mentioned about reading the book Heidi when you were about 8 or so, and then you created this idea that you wanted to live in Switzerland. So at an early age, if we want to use the law of attraction or the law of manifestation, and even a concept from the Passion Test training, you're a certified Passion Test Facilitator, and so am I. And one of the things that course emphasized was, what are we focusing on? What do we want to have in our life? And so early on, you were doing those, you were living those concepts, and it worked. You lived in Switzerland.
I mean, when I got the job and I went over there, I was on the plane thinking, I am really flying over to Switzerland where I'm going to be living and working. And that has to be one of the most amazing moments of my life. And the interesting thing was, I did create that through jobs that I had from before, what I knew were my strengths and talents. And it got me there. And in fact, in many times when I've had different jobs, they've been new jobs, nobody ever in them. And then I've had to create what they became or what was my contribution. And I've done that in many, many jobs. And also along the way too, helped others find out what their strengths were or how they wanted to approach things. But I just know myself, if I want something and concentrate on it, it's not magic exactly, but you start doing the things that will attract the opportunity, either in maybe some extra study or meeting the right people, what they call serendipity a little bit, chance encounters. And it is truly amazing if you stay open to this, how life works, because it really does. Because I got to Switzerland.
Right. Well, and those are very important words of wisdom that you just shared. And having that creative spirit, looking for opportunities, and it may not be that all of the answers are in that opportunity. You may say yes to an opportunity, as you did in going to Switzerland, and then you created your job. You created other jobs, right? We get our foot in the door somewhere, whether it's a job, whether it's a business, whether it's a hobby, whatever it might be, we take that step, and then we, with our creativity, with our focus, we make it what we want. And I think that truly is the answer to how a person can live a life that they love.
I totally agree. And this is one of the reasons that I went into coaching after I had been in, several sort of mainstream jobs, because I knew I had learned so much and gained so much knowledge, and I just wanted to share that with other people to, either make their journey easier or help them, clarify if they weren't happy, because there are so many people out there that are not happy. And one of the other things, when I look back on it, I was always deeply interested in learning languages. So when I was in high school, I took 4 different languages, and I had a choice between taking driving education lessons or Russian. So I chose Russian. Now, don't ask me why, because we don't use that in Canada too much, and it would have been better to learn to drive, which I did when I was about 30. And with that, I learned about 3 or 4, not too badly. And that made me very versatile to travel and also to live in other places, because especially in Switzerland, they have 4 main languages there. English is not one of them, but I mean, they work in English too. But French was, and French in Canada is quite widely used. And I learned Spanish too, and that was a great help to me when I lived in New York City. So all these choices from before, and I knew when I finished my university studies, I didn't want to be a teacher or an interpreter. But then the year before, a program had opened up for library science studies to become a librarian. So I applied for that, and it was one of the newest ones in Canada with computer applications. I got into that, and I never looked back, with information management and organizing things, which all suit my character to a T, because I like to be, organized and have things sort of lined up. It was just amazing that all these choices I made randomly, so I thought, came together, and I've had some wonderful opportunities in my career.
Well, you actually have had a very varied career, and you've even worked for the United Nations. So talk about that experience.
Oh, that was one of the, I worked there for 22 years approximately. And I had been working up in Ottawa, Canada before that, running a small technical library. But then I got a chance to go down to New York, where the UN headquarters are, to work in their library. And I got a job as what they call a database manager. And I had a lot of, computer background behind me. And it was just wonderful, because there were all these international projects to work on, and there were about 180 member countries, so there's lots of chances to use my different languages and that. And I got to participate in a lot of very interesting things where I did some travel. And the UN itself works in 6 languages, 3 of which I knew. And I just got used to being in a multicultural and multilingual environment. Canada is quite multicultural, but the UN is far more so, with all these different countries. Although English and French and Spanish are 3 of the major languages, that they work in. But I got comfortable being in that kind of an environment, because it broadened my outlook. But I also saw that at the base, people are pretty much all the same. They have family concerns, they have career concerns, they have relationship concerns. So it doesn't matter where we're from or what language we speak. At the heart, we're pretty much similar, with a lot of similar interests. So when I realized that, as I was going on, like I was in New York for about 12 years, and then I went over to Geneva for about, I guess 14, because I had worked at another company in the States a little bit before that. And I just saw that life is not that much different wherever you are. You just have to find out sort of how to connect with things and make your way. And that requires knowing what you want out of life, making a plan that's feasible, and then making sure you have a support system. Now, when I lived in a country that was mostly working in the area I did in French, I had to go back about 10, 15 years to bring back my French that I had studied but not used. So that took a year or two. And it got to the point where I was even dreaming in French at one point. And I could sit down and I could write short reports and other things in French without using a dictionary. So I thought, gee, this is pretty good. And it was just so exciting, and to be in different cultures and see different, foods and whatever, because I've always enjoyed, cooking and sharing things with people. And just also too, the United Nations concerns itself a lot with humanitarian efforts and prevention of conflicts and war. And those were very important to me as interests. And I got to work on a lot of projects where I would be able to contribute to that. So it was, I think, one of the most amazing jobs I ever had.
Well, and it sounds very, very interesting. I love to travel. I have an interest in military war conflicts because of my background being in the military, and I've responded to crises and disasters. So I see the work and the effort that the UN has around the world. So it is very important. And I can only imagine working for the United Nations and meeting the diplomats and understanding what's going on in all of the countries of the world. And, so I'm really excited for you being a part of Global Voice Radio, because I can imagine through your shows, even though you're going to be concentrating on talking about what individuals can do in their life, you have so many experiences to bring in from what you've done in your career and in your jobs as examples of saying yes and moving forward and not limiting yourself. There's a lot of people who never travel out of their hometown, out of a certain, circumference or their state. And you've traveled out of your town, out of your country, you've lived in different countries. So that says a lot about who you are as a person and what you're able to bring to other individuals that you're working with. So let's switch topics a little bit. And you talked about your career with the United Nations, living in Switzerland. And so now you have transitioned, and for the last several years, you've been creating your own business. You've been creating, providing support and services to others. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. It was around the beginning of 2007. I left the UN because I had a chance for a nice package, because they decided the area I was in, they wanted to downsize. And at that time, my sister had taken early retirement. So we owned a house together in the area near Toronto. So I decided then to go back to Canada, because it was just a little bit too expensive and not feasible to be in Switzerland, after I had left there. So I did that. But before that, I knew I would be leaving eventually. I started coaching studies through an organization called Coach University, and I was able to get my coaching qualification while working full-time at the UN, because I did evening teleseminars at night for the different courses and, wrote papers and different things. So when I finished my work at the end of 2006, I was all set with a good qualification to start in coaching, because I'd already, when I was in, normal jobs, had coached people unofficially and officially, and, a few managerial roles. And I found that I liked it. And that was something I thought, well, when I go back to Canada, I have to do something. I'm going to sit and watch television, and you can't read all the time. So I did that. And especially now with the internet, I was able to establish a very good coaching practice. And yet, when I got back to Canada, I had the opportunity to study a new self-help technique, which was called tapping or emotional freedom technique, that originated in 1995. So I got a qualification in that, and that is a technique that sort of, you would call it new age perhaps, but it has the ability for people to sort of use their energy and stop, problems that are coming up with them. They use meridians in the body, and you tap on different spots, and you then use sort of like affirmations to do clearing statements. So I found that was very good. And then I also at that time was there about 4 years, and then moved after that to London, Ontario, which is where I'm from, because my parents and an elderly aunt weren't too well. So my sister and I, we just sold things up and went back because they needed the help and support. And then there, I found out about the Passion Test, which you also have trained in. And it's a wonderful technique to help people find out about themselves, what they want out of life. And it goes so well with coaching. So I've been able to combine all of these different things into coaching people, what they call one-on-one. But what I'm hoping to do in, time to come is to go and make courses so that more people can take the knowledge that I have and apply it to their own lives, because it's difficult to, when you're working one-on-one, to affect many people. So with me having worked with so in many people and in groups, this is one thing that I like to do, and that's one reason I'm so excited to be part of the Global Voices project, because I feel almost like I've gone back out into the world, because where I am, it's a smaller city. It's quite good, but it's not big. It's not cosmopolitan, and my heart really is more in the global thing. So I'm getting back more into this, and being able to be part of this is wonderful.
So, Carol, one of the things that people oftentimes have questions about is when they're going to build their own business, when do they start working on it? And you were able to make that decision and to know, as you were looking at what was happening with your job, with your career with the United Nations, and you were able to start working on building your business, learning the skills that you would need. So what are some tips that you would share with others in regards to taking the steps to build their own business?
Well, I think it's very important to take time to see what are your strengths, talents, and interests. What really fires you up to maybe go forward and make a business in? Because if you're making your own business, you're becoming, they call a solopreneur very often, working on your own. And it really needs to be something that you want to spend time in, because it's not going to be a 9-to-5 job usually. You have to spend a lot of time, and then you have to give yourself some time once you figure out maybe what area you want and what your talents and strengths are. Find out too, do you need extra training or qualifications to get that career? Because usually it doesn't just sort of open up. So you might need to leave a bit of time. Maybe you're in a job you don't like very much, or you feel, stifled, whatever, and you'd like to just quit it and, rush out there. My advice is really take the time to get to know yourself, what kind of business you might like to do, and also take a look at, okay, if this is the type of business you want, is there a lot of competition out there? Are others doing it? Is it going to be a local business? Is it going to be something national? Are you going to offer a service? Are you going to offer and sell products? get very clear, because there are different business models for the different types of things you want. And then, for whatever service or product you might think you want to do, take some time to talk to people. Is there really a demand for what you want to do? Because you don't want to leave maybe a successful career where you're getting, the money you need to live on, and then suddenly you're in a company that you've formed and nothing happens. So be very, very sure before quitting something that perhaps is bringing in money, and use your spare time, your downtime, to study things that will get you closer to the goal of having your own business. And also go to networking meetings in your city, business networking. Get to know people, not about necessarily what you can do for them, but just go and talk and listen to people. And another great thing, which I found helpful too, is many, many cities in Canada and the US have Toastmasters International, which is a wonderful group where you can learn how to do speaking and be at ease in groups. And this is wonderful to go to, because you also make some great connections for business there. A lot of business people do that. And then you sometimes will find that, if you don't like speaking or selling, this is going to be where you can do it, in a nice way, and you can make some, friends and connections. So I would say take it slowly, analyze, put all that together, and then make yourself a business plan, even if it's simple, for 1 year. And like, what do you need? Are you going to need premises? Can you do it out of your home? What can you write off as business expenses? What will you need as business expenses? You've got equipment, you've got maybe stock to get, and really put it all down there, and then see, can I really do this?
Well, those are great recommendations and tips for anyone who is looking at starting their own business. And the name of your show, on which you are going to provide even more tips and talk to people in regards to personal development and business development, your show is entitled Only the Best for You. So talk a little bit about how you came up with that title, or what does that title represent to you, and what do you want it to represent to your listeners?
Well, I did a bit of thinking about that when you said to me, have a title which means something to you. And I will say that in my life, when I have taken time to look at what are the best choices for me, that's when my life has flowed well, and there's been a lot of happiness. And what I'm hoping this show will do for people is give them tips and tools so that they can decide what will be a really good life for them, if it isn't, ideal now, and be able to do it in an easy and supported fashion. Because I hope to have guest experts on, as well as, making my own presentations of different techniques, different other things that one can get involved in, that will show you how to make a good decision and get a life path going that includes personal goals and business goals, but in a very well thought out way. And for myself, I like to say to people, if you can find that part of yourself that gets really fired up and excited, that is the area to put your efforts, because life is short. And you've often heard they say it's not a dress rehearsal. This is the life we have now. And you might believe in reincarnation, but frankly, I would prefer to have a good life now and not have to I've made, many decisions that weren't the best, or mistakes. But I think if you can minimize that and create a great life for yourself, you can do it at any age. You can do it if you're younger. You can do it if, you're in your mid-career, if you're retired. You can start over any time for a great life.
I think that is a premise that everyone needs to understand and embrace. we truly have opportunities to create our best life now. And I love the way that you explained only the best for you, that we make decisions that we are feeling, sensing in our heart, in our spirit, in our soul, that are the best for us. Now, that doesn't mean we exclude what it means for our family. But if we are truly aligned, and I also think about what you mentioned in reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, he talks about that, right? He talks about being in alignment. And when we are in alignment with what we're looking at and what we want to do, we know that that's the best decision that we can make at the time. You know, and also in listening to what you are bringing to your show. I mean, you have a lot of experience internationally from working with the United Nations, which is definitely a benefit when you're working globally and coaching individuals and groups. But you are a trained, certified coach. You also are trained in emotional freedom technique, which helps us personally and professionally deal with issues in our life and to become clear. You're certified as a Passion Test Facilitator, which helps us to know not only are we working on a certain path in regards to our business, our job, with our family, but also knowing those personal things that we want to achieve. And just your wisdom, your years of experience. So I am so excited to listen to your show myself, but have you share with others and really help them with their journey and sharing the tips and tools, and also the opportunity for individuals to work with you personally, for you to be their coach, for you to help them create this blueprint to create their personal and business plan. So I'm really excited for you to join Global Voice Radio, to host Only the Best for You, and to be able to share what you have learned, the wisdom you've accumulated over the years that you have had working with others. So again, welcome to Global Voice Radio, and your show will air on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And so next week will be your first show, the first week of January of 2018. And so it's a really exciting time for what we'll be doing.
I am so, grateful and excited for this opportunity that I really look forward to working, with you and the team and all those wonderful people who will be out there listening.
Now, Carol, for individuals listening to this first show, what is a way that they can contact you and get in touch with you?
Well, they can contact me through my website, and I'll give that. It's www.thepassionmotivator. That's THEP like Peter, ASS like Sam, ION like Norman, M for Mike, OTIVATOR.com. And there's a contact sheet there, or they can get in touch with me by telephone, which is 519-686-2691.
And of course, you can always find Carol on Facebook through Global Voice Radio, and also through her personal Facebook, Carol Davies. So we do encourage all of you to connect with Carol and to tune into her show, Only the Best for You, which will be on Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern. So Carol, thank you so much for your time today. And I know that we will be talking quite a bit, and I'll be listening to your show. And I look forward to 2018, that we are actually in the same place at the same time and get to meet you in person.
Likewise, it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern for Only the Best for You with Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio.